These are the 8 richest families that secretly own Ohio, and their underground secrets are absolutely wild. We will see a billionaire who flew to space and then dove to the Titanic just for the thrill, a family that convinced an entire county to build their stadium for free. And at number 1, we have a man worth $22 billion who basically owns the city of Cleveland. Let's get into the full list. Number 8. The Connor Dynasty. We're kicking this off with a man who is, quite simply, the most adventurous billionaire in America. Larry Connor is worth around $2.1 billion, built through the Connor Group, his luxury real estate firm that's quietly amassed a $5 billion portfolio of apartment buildings across 12 states. And it all started in Dayton, Ohio, back in 1972, when he scraped together $52,000 to buy a little tavern and flipped it for a 300% return, from a Dayton bar to a $5 billion empire. But the money is honestly the least interesting thing about this guy, because Larry Connor does not spend his fortune on the usual billionaire stuff. He spends it trying to die, basically. In April of 2022, he didn't just buy a ticket to space. He became a pilot on the first fully private commercial mission to the International Space Station, paying a reported $55 million and training for over 750 hours to do it. That's right, this man from Dayton flew himself to space. And that's just the start. He keeps a Northrop F-5 fighter jet, an actual supersonic military jet, parked in his private hangar at the Wright Brothers Airport. He holds a world record for the highest formation parachute jump, leaping out at 38,000 feet from a hot air balloon. And he's gone the complete opposite direction too, diving into the deepest trenches of the ocean and announcing a deep-sea mission to the wreck of the Titanic in a custom-built submersible. Space, the sky, and the bottom of the ocean. This man has conquered all three. But here's the part that tells you who he really is. During the 2020 pandemic, while other companies were slashing jobs, Connor quietly handed out $1.6 million in surprise bonuses straight to his non-executive everyday staff. And he built the Greater Dayton School, Ohio's first private school designed specifically for low-income kids. The man chases the edge of human limits, then turns around and lifts up his entire community. Not a bad way to start a list. Now Connor blows his fortune on once-in-a-lifetime adventures. Our next family spent theirs on the ultimate floating status symbol, an $85 million super yacht named after, well, themselves. Number 7. The Schottenstein Dynasty. If you've ever shopped at American Eagle, bought shoes at DSW, or grabbed furniture from Value City, then congratulations, you've personally funded the Schottenstein Dynasty. This Columbus family is worth around $2.8 billion, and their retail empire goes all the way back to 1917, when a Lithuanian immigrant named Ephraim Schottenstein opened his very first store. Today, the family patriarch Jay Schottenstein runs the whole thing as the chairman and CEO of multiple massive retail brands. But this family doesn't just sell you clothes. They own the actual ground commerce sits on. Through the Schottenstein Property Group, they own and operate hundreds of shopping centers all across the country. And their name is literally carved into Ohio because the Jerome Schottenstein Center, a 19,000-seat arena right on the campus of Ohio State University, was funded by this family. When your name is on the arena, everybody knows exactly who runs the town, and the lifestyle is exactly as lavish as you'd hope. Jay and his wife Jeannie live in a sprawling Columbus mansion that comes with private tennis courts, 2 outdoor pools, and an honest-to-goodness garden labyrinth like something out of a movie. They get around in a Gulfstream G550 private jet, but the real flex was on the water. For nearly a decade, the family owned an $85 million 200-foot custom super yacht called Just Jay's. And here's the cute part. It was named after the shared first initial of the family members, Jay, Jeannie, Joey, Jeff, and Jonathan. They named a 9-figure yacht after their group text, basically. In 2026, they sold it off for $83 million, one of the biggest pre-owned yacht deals of the year. Now, like any dynasty this old, they've weathered their share of private family drama behind closed doors. But through it all, Jay has carefully placed his sons into the top leadership of the retail and real estate empires, locking in the family's grip on Columbus for at least another generation. Now, the Schottensteins absolutely love the spotlight. Our next billionaire is the complete opposite. He's a self-made doctor most Ohioans have never even heard of, who quietly bought up an entire neighborhood, the offices, the hotel, even the restaurant you'd eat dinner in. Speaking of skipping the spotlight entirely and just keeping things low-key and smart, that is what pulled someone on our team to the Pulse R8 Smart Ring. It tracks your heart rate, your sleep, and your workout straight from your finger. A week on a single charge, 100 days with the case, and it's fully waterproof. The part that got us was the price. Under $40, a fraction of what the big-name rings cost, because it comes direct instead of through the retailers that mark everything up. If you're watching on your TV, pause and scan the QR code on screen with your phone camera, or tap the first link in the description. Now, back to the invisible giant hiding in plain sight. Number 6. The Troendel Dynasty. Here's a name you've almost certainly never heard, attached to a $3.5 billion fortune. Dr. August Troendel is one of the wealthiest self-made billionaires in the entire state, and he did it in an industry most people don't even know exists. He's the founder of MedPace, a clinical research company he started in Cincinnati back in 1992. Basically, when pharmaceutical companies need to run the trials that get new drugs approved, MedPace is who they call. And that quiet, behind-the-scenes business is now worth around $15 billion. But here's where Troendel gets genuinely fascinating, because of how he operates. This is a man obsessed with control. He runs MedPace with a special share structure that makes it basically impossible for anyone to ever take his company from him. And he applied that same total control philosophy to real estate in a way you rarely see. He took an old industrial site in a Cincinnati neighborhood and built Madison Square, a massive mixed-use district. And he didn't just build his company's global headquarters there. He built the offices, the retail shops, the dining spots, and an upscale hotel. And then he put all of it under his own private management company. Think about what that means. He owns the building you work in, the hotel you sleep in, and the restaurant you eat dinner in. He vertically integrated an entire neighborhood. That's not just being rich, that's quietly becoming the landlord of an entire district. And the lifestyle of this so-called new money billionaire is appropriately global and private. While he keeps a custom estate in Cincinnati, he also spends serious time at his beachfront retreat in Vero Beach, Florida, his luxury ski chalet tucked into the European Alps, and an exclusive beach house on an island off the coast of France. He stays almost completely out of the social spotlight, letting his empire do all the talking. He doesn't need the fame. He owns the streets. Now, Troendel is brand new money. Our next family is the oldest money on this entire list, a fortune that started, of all the unlikely places, with a single cup of decaffeinated coffee. Number 5. The Gund Dynasty. Most of the families on this list made their money in the last few decades. The Gund Dynasty has been quietly powerful in Cleveland for nearly a century, and their $3.5 billion fortune started with one genuinely brilliant bet. Back in the early 1900s, George Gund II bought a struggling little decaffeinated coffee brand called Sanka for about $300,000. Then, in 1927, he sold it to Kellogg's for a staggering $10 million. And he was smart, he didn't blow it. He reinvested every penny into banking, insurance, and real estate, eventually becoming the single largest shareholder of Kellogg's and building one of the biggest banks in the country. By the time he died in 1966, his estate was worth $200 million, which would be nearly $2 billion today. And here's what makes the Gunds different from everyone else on this list. They took that money and built a legacy of giving. The George Gund Foundation today holds over $550 million in assets, and every single year it pours tens of millions into Cleveland, funding public education, urban development, and environmental projects all over the city. But the most moving part of the Gund story is deeply personal. One of the heirs, Gordon Gund, tragically lost his eyesight in 1970 to a degenerative eye disease. Now, this family could have just retreated into private grief. Instead, they channeled their fortune into co-founding the Foundation Fighting Blindness, an organization that has since directed enormous sums toward research that could one day cure the very disease that took Gordon's sight. They turned a personal tragedy into hope for millions of people they'll never even meet. And that's the Gund way. You won't catch them flexing supercars or naming yachts after themselves. They live quietly in Cleveland's most exclusive old money neighborhoods, building enduring institutions instead of chasing headlines. They are the definition of quiet, generational power. But our next billionaire is powerful in a much louder and much more controversial way. He's worth $5 billion, and he drives a totally regular car because almost every dollar he has is tied up in one of the greatest stadium heists in the history of sports. Number 4. The Brown Dynasty. Mike Brown is 90 years old, worth $5 billion, and he might just be the most cunning businessman on this entire list. His family owns the Cincinnati Bengals, the NFL team founded by his legendary father, Paul Brown. But here's the twist that makes the Browns so unusual. Almost all of that $5 billion is completely illiquid. It's not in stocks or cash. It's tied up almost entirely in the value of the football team itself. So on paper, he's a billionaire, but in his daily life, he's famously, almost shockingly frugal. He drives standard cars, works out of a modest office, and runs one of the tightest budgets in the league. So how did a frugal guy pull off one of the most legendary power moves in sports history? Buckle up. Back in 1996, Mike Brown hinted that the Bengals might leave Cincinnati. The city panicked. So Hamilton County voters approved a sales tax increase, and taxpayers ended up covering 94% of the cost to build a brand new stadium. 94%? The public paid for almost the entire thing. But it gets so much better, or worse, depending on which side you're on. The lease he negotiated is the stuff of legend. The county is on the hook for basically all the repairs, the upgrades, even the utility bills. And the Bengals? They get to keep all the stadium revenue, all the naming rights money, all the parking fees. The public pays to maintain it, and the family pockets the profits. Sports economists still study this deal as one of the most lopsided agreements ever signed. Now, even Mike Brown's tight operation has hit a few cash crunches. When the team needed to lock up its star quarterback with a massive guaranteed contract, the family reportedly had to sell the stadium's naming rights and take out league loans just to cover the required cash in escrow. The empire is now run day-to-day by his sharp daughter Katie Blackburn, considered one of the best contract negotiators in football. But a storm is coming, because that famous lease is up for renewal soon, and the taxpayers of Hamilton County have made one thing very clear. They are never giving this family a free ride again. Now, the Browns own their scrappy hometown team. Our next family owns one of the most glamorous franchises in the entire NFL, except it plays 2,000 miles away, while they stubbornly refuse to leave small-town Ohio. Number 3. The DeBartolo York Dynasty. This one is a genuine head-scratcher in the best way. The DeBartolo York family is worth $8.5 billion, and they own over 90% of the San Francisco 49ers, one of the most iconic and valuable franchises in all of football, worth well over $8 billion on its own. The fortune was originally built by Edward DeBartolo Sr., a pioneer who basically invented the modern American shopping mall. So you'd assume this family lives it up in a Silicon Valley mansion, right? Wrong. Despite owning a glamorous California football empire, the family has stubbornly, almost defiantly, kept their home base in Youngstown, Ohio. They live in an upscale suburb called Canfield and have resisted every pressure to move their lives out west. The family is led by Denise DeBartolo York, and she is a fascinating character. She's a licensed pilot who regularly flies private jets back and forth between Little Youngstown and San Francisco for team meetings and game days. Imagine that, a billionaire NFL owner piloting her own plane across the country to watch her team play. But the road to her control was paved with high-stakes family drama. Her brother, Eddie DeBartolo Jr., was the beloved flashy owner during the 49ers' golden dynasty of the 80s and 90s, racking up 5 Super Bowls. Then, in 1998, Eddie got tangled in a federal corruption scandal involving a state governor and was convicted of a felony for failing to report an extortion attempt. To protect the precious NFL franchise from the fallout, Denise made a bold, controversial move. She seized control of the entire team in 2000, leaving her brother with real estate and cash instead. He was eventually pardoned years later, but the football empire stayed firmly in Denise's hands. Today, the dynasty rolls on, with Denise's son, Jed York, serving as the active CEO of the 49ers. They prove you don't have to live in the spotlight to own a piece of it. This family quietly runs a California empire from the quiet comfort of small-town Ohio. But owning an NFL team, as huge as that is nothing compared to what our next man owns. Because he didn't just buy up property in Ohio, he literally built his own private city from scratch. Number 2. The Wexner Dynasty. When we say a billionaire owns a town, we usually mean it figuratively. With Les Wexner, we mean it almost literally. This man, worth somewhere between $9 and $9.5 billion, didn't just get rich in Ohio. He built an entire city. But before the city, there was the empire. And the way it started is almost hard to believe. Back in 1963, Wexner borrowed $5,000 from his aunt and opened a single clothing store called The Limited. That $5,000 loan grew into one of the most dominant retail empires in American history. If you walked through any shopping mall in the last 40 years, you walked through Wexner's world because he was behind Victoria's Secret Bath & Body Works, Pink, Express, and even Abercrombie & Fitch. And get this, he bought Victoria's Secret in 1982 for just $1 million, when it was a failing little chain. He turned that $1 million pickup into a brand, pulling in over $7 billion a year. That is one of the greatest business flips of all time. But here's where Wexner separates himself from every other billionaire on this list. He took a sleepy rural area outside Columbus and personally master-planned it into New Albany, an ultra-exclusive, almost 17-square-mile Georgian-style community. He didn't buy a mansion in a fancy town. He built the fancy town, and then he filled its business park with over 40 massive data centers, attracting some of the biggest companies on Earth. To top it off, he created an exclusive club called the Columbus Partnership, made up only of the region's most powerful CEOs, basically putting the entire economic direction of Central Ohio in one room that he controlled. At the heart of his kingdom sits a private 340-acre estate with a 60,000-square-foot mansion and world-class horse facilities. Out on the water, the family is tied to a 315-foot super yacht worth around $100 million. Now, in fairness, no complete telling of Wexner's story can ignore that for 2 decades, his personal fortune was managed by the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, an association Wexner has said he came to regret, and that ended back in 2007. It's a dark shadow over the legacy. But in terms of pure, physical control over Ohio's soil, no one builds an empire quite like the man who built his own city. And yet, as staggering as Wexner's $9 billion is, it looks almost small next to our number 1. Because the richest man in all of Ohio is worth more than nearly everyone else on this entire list combined. And his story? It starts with a 12-year-old kid delivering pizzas on a bicycle. Number 1. The Gilbert Dynasty. Here he is, the undisputed king of Ohio. Dan Gilbert is worth a jaw-dropping $22.5 billion. To put that in perspective, take the entire Wexner fortune, the second richest on this list, and Gilbert is worth more than double it. This isn't a gap, it's a canyon. And what makes it so wild is where he came from. Gilbert grew up in Detroit, where his dad owned a local bar and his grandfather managed a car wash. This was not a wealthy household, but at just 12 years old, little Dan organized a neighborhood pizza delivery service, running the orders around on his bicycle. That same hustle never left him. In 1985, he and his brother Gary started a mortgage company called Rock Financial. You probably know it by the name it has today, Rocket Mortgage. His roughly 79% stake in that company is the engine behind almost his entire fortune. But Gilbert didn't stop at being rich. He set out to physically own Cleveland. Through his real estate company Bedrock, he's pouring $3.5 billion into transforming 35 acres of Cleveland's riverfront, rebuilding the heart of the city in his own image. And then, of course, there's the toy every billionaire dreams of. In 2005, he bought the Cleveland Cavaliers for a then-record $375 million. He also scooped up the city's hockey and basketball minor league teams, just for good measure. And if you're a sports fan, you know Dan Gilbert never does anything quietly. When LeBron James left Cleveland in 2010, Gilbert fired off that legendary open letter blasting him, famously written in Comic Sans font, of all things. The pettiness was historic. But the redemption was sweet too, because LeBron eventually came back and delivered Cleveland its 2016 championship. Even after suffering a serious stroke in 2019, Gilbert held on to absolute voting control of his empire, proving nothing takes this man out of the driver's seat. From a bicycle pizza route to a $22 billion throne, that is the richest family in Ohio, so there you have it. From Dan Gilbert quietly rebuilding the skyline of Cleveland, to Mike Brown's billion-dollar stadium maneuver in Cincinnati, to Les Wexner literally constructing his own private city outside Columbus, to Larry Connor blasting off into space from Dayton. These 8 families don't just live in Ohio. They own its skylines, its sports teams, its towns, and the quiet levers of power most people never even see. That's the underground secret. The Buckeye State has a set of owners, and now you know exactly who they are. So which one surprised you the most? Was it the billionaire who flew to space and dove toward the Titanic, the family that got an entire county to fund their stadium, or the man who built a whole city just because he could? Drop your pick in the comments, because we genuinely love hearing from you. And if you enjoyed this one, do us a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to Global Status, and we'll see you in the next one.